The Devil Wears Prada 2 was directed by David Frankel, with the screenplay written by Aline Brosh McKenna. The film was produced by Wendy Finerman, with Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, and Stanley Tucci returning in their original roles. The principal cast also includes Justin Theroux, Lucy Liu, and Kenneth Branagh. Miranda Priestly is played by Meryl Streep, Andy Sachs by Anne Hathaway, Emily Charlton by Emily Blunt, and Nigel Kipling by Stanley Tucci. The cinematography was handled by Florian Ballhaus, while the editing was done by Greg Hayden. The music was composed by Theodore Shapiro. The film was based on the characters from the earlier film, which was adapted from Lauren Weisberger's novel, The Devil Wears Prada. It was released by 20th Century Studios in the United States on May 1st, 2026. The Devil Wears Prada 2 is the kind of sequel that has a difficult job. The first film became very popular because of its sharp characters, stylish world, funny moments, workplace pressure, and the relationship between Andy Sachs and Miranda Priestly. So naturally, the big question is whether the second film has something new to say, or whether it is simply trying to bring back old memories. In my view, the film does a good job of bringing the old characters back, while also showing how much the world around them has changed. The story takes place about 20 years after Andy Sachs left Runway magazine. Andy is no longer the young woman who walks into Miranda Priestly's office without understanding the fashion world. She has become a respected reporter in New York. She has built a career of her own and has learned how to deal with powerful people without losing herself. But Andy's comfortable life suddenly changes. During an award ceremony, she and the people working with her receive the shocking news that their entire newsroom has been dismissed. The way the news comes to them makes the situation even worse. Instead of being personally informed, they receive a message telling them that their jobs are gone. Andy suddenly finds herself in the same uncertain working world that millions of people face today. At the same time, Miranda is facing a completely different problem. She is still the powerful woman everyone remembers, but the world of fashion publishing has changed. The old days when people eagerly waited for a printed magazine are disappearing. Readers now want information immediately. Newspapers and magazines are fighting for attention on phones and computers. Short videos, sensational stories, and attention-grabbing headlines are becoming more important than carefully written articles. Miranda does not like this new world. She believes in quality, style, and authority. But the people running the company are more interested in money. They want numbers. They want advertising. They want people clicking on stories. They do not care about the emotional history of Runway. This creates the main problem of the film. The owner of the company that controls Runway decides that the magazine needs Andy. He hires her as the features editor without even asking Miranda. Naturally, Miranda is not happy. Imagine the woman who once controlled every person in the building suddenly being told that the young assistant she once controlled is now returning as an editor. There's plenty of tension between them. But Andy is not the same person anymore. She is older, more experienced, and more confident. She does not simply follow Miranda's orders. At the same time, she understands that Miranda is not her enemy in the same way she once thought. Nigel Kipling is also back, and his presence gives the film some of its warmth and humor. He explains just how badly Runway is struggling. The printed magazine is losing readers, while the company is trying to survive through cheap internet material and attention-seeking stories. This part of the film feels especially relevant because it is not only about fashion. It is about what happens when an old way of doing things meets a new world. Andy is given difficult assignments. One of them involves Emily Charlton, who is now working for a major fashion company. Emily is no longer the nervous assistant we saw in the first film. She has become successful and powerful herself. Her meeting with Andy becomes one of the enjoyable parts of the story because both women have changed so much. Their conversation also raises an important question. Fashion has become more expensive and increasingly difficult for ordinary people to enjoy. Andy questions the industry, while Emily understands the business side of it. Neither woman is completely wrong, and that makes their disagreement interesting. Andy initially tries to write serious articles, but they do not receive much attention. She then realizes that surviving in this new world requires a different approach. She manages to arrange a difficult interview with Sasha Barnes, the former wife of a wealthy technology businessman. This interview becomes an important moment for Andy because it proves that she still has the ability to find stories that other people cannot get. Meanwhile, Miranda is fighting her own battle. The owner of the company promises Miranda a very important promotion. She could become the worldwide head of content. For Miranda, this would be recognition after years of controlling Runway. But before the promotion can officially happen, the owner dies suddenly. His son takes control of the company, and this changes everything. The new boss does not have the same emotional attachment to Runway. He sees the magazine simply as a business. If it does not make enough money, he is prepared to reduce its size or change it completely. He brings in people to examine the company and find ways to cut costs. Miranda, surprisingly, does not explode the way she might have done years earlier. She understands that shouting will not save her magazine. She has to play the game carefully. Andy also has problems outside the office. Her relationship with Peter becomes difficult because she is under pressure about her career. She becomes worried about losing her position, and this affects the way she treats him. Peter has his own work and his own ambitions, and Andy begins to realize that she cannot expect everyone around her to sacrifice their dreams for hers. At this point, the film becomes more than a story about fashion. It becomes a story about people who are reaching a stage in life where they have to ask themselves what really matters. Andy is also offered a large amount of money to write a book revealing everything she knows about Miranda. This is a tempting opportunity. She knows Miranda has hurt people. She knows there are many stories that could become successful in a book, but Andy is not sure whether she really wants to do it. That hesitation says a lot about how much she has changed. The biggest part of the story comes during Milan Fashion Week. The film once again takes us into the glamorous world of fashion, but underneath all the beautiful clothes and celebrations, there is a serious business battle taking place. Nigel helps organize a huge runway event featuring Lady Gaga. At the same time, Andy develops a plan to save the magazine. She believes the best way to protect Runway is to find someone wealthy enough to purchase it. She finds a possible buyer named Benji. But there is a major problem. Emily is now involved with Benji. Andy and Emily try to explain their plan to Miranda. Miranda immediately understands what is really happening. She knows Emily wants her position at Runway. Miranda then reveals something important about Emily. She says that although Emily is extremely capable, she does not have the creative vision needed to lead Runway. This creates a painful moment because Emily has spent years trying to prove herself. Then, things become even more complicated when Miranda discovers what Benji really wants to do with the magazine. He wants to modernize it by replacing many employees with artificial intelligence. Miranda realizes that this is not simply about saving money anymore. It is about destroying the identity of Runway. That is when Miranda decides to fight. She tells Andy to find another buyer. Andy turns to Sasha, and instead of asking her to buy only Runway, she convinces her to purchase the entire parent company. This is a bold move, and it gives Andy an important role in saving the magazine. The plan succeeds. Jay accepts Sasha's offer and abandons the earlier deal with Benji. Miranda finally receives the promotion that had been promised to her. But there is another person Miranda needs to think about: Nigel. For years, Nigel has supported Miranda. He has remained loyal even when she treated him harshly. Miranda finally realizes that she has taken his loyalty for granted, so she gives him the opportunity to deliver the main speech at the big Runway celebration. It is a small but meaningful way of showing that Miranda has learned something. One of the best things about the movie is that it does not try to turn Miranda into a completely different person. She is still Miranda. She is still demanding. She is still frightening. She still expects perfection. But there is a little more understanding in her. The relationship between Andy and Miranda is also handled carefully. They are not suddenly best friends. They still have differences, but there is respect between them now. Miranda eventually tells Andy that Andy's idealism inspired her to fight for Runway. This is important because years earlier, Andy was the person who challenged Miranda without even fully understanding what she was challenging. Miranda also knows that Andy has considered writing a book about her. Instead of becoming angry, she tells Andy to write it. She even tells her not to hide the unpleasant parts. That is a surprisingly honest moment. Andy then decides what she really wants to do with her life. She also repairs her relationship with Peter. Emily's relationship with Benji ends, leaving her disappointed, but perhaps more independent. Nigel reveals another secret. He was the person who encouraged the company to bring Andy back. He has always believed in her. The ending brings the story back to the beginning in a clever way. Miranda returns to Runway, and her powerful personality is still very much alive. Andy gets a better office, showing how far she has come since she first entered that building as an inexperienced young woman. For me, the biggest strength of The Devil Wears Prada 2 is the way it shows time passing. These characters are not 20 years younger. They have careers, relationships, responsibilities, and regrets. The film understands that growing older does not mean becoming completely different. Sometimes it means learning how to use the same personality in a wiser way. Meryl Streep remains one of the biggest reasons to watch the film. Miranda's expressions, silence, timing, and way of looking at people still say more than long speeches. She does not need to shout to dominate a room. Anne Hathaway also works very well as the older Andy. She gives Andy confidence without making her arrogant. Andy has learned from Miranda, but she has not become Miranda. Emily is another strong part of the movie. Emily's transformation from assistant to successful fashion professional is satisfying, especially because she now has enough confidence to challenge Andy. Stanley Tucci brings warmth as Nigel. His character represents loyalty, talent, and the importance of recognizing people who have quietly helped you succeed. The film also has plenty of beautiful fashion moments. If someone enjoys clothing, fashion events, glamorous locations, and the world surrounding high-end magazines, there's a lot to enjoy visually. The humor works too. Some of the funniest moments come from watching these older characters try to survive a world that has become much faster and more digital. But the film is not perfect. One weakness is that the story sometimes feels too dependent on the first film. If someone has never seen the earlier movie, some relationships may not have the same emotional weight. Another weakness is that the business conflict can become complicated. There are many people, companies, deals, and plans involved. At certain points, the story feels more like a corporate battle than a personal drama. Some viewers may also feel that the film is too comfortable. It brings back beloved characters, it gives them familiar problems, and eventually gives many of them satisfying endings. That makes it enjoyable, but it also means the film does not take as many risks as it could. Still, I think the film succeeds because its main message is simple. The world changes, industries change, technology changes, and careers change. But people still have to decide what they value. Andy learns that success is not only about having a good job. Miranda learns that power cannot protect everything forever. Emily learns that ambition has consequences. Nigel finally receives recognition for the loyalty he has given for years. So if you enjoyed the first The Devil Wears Prada, this sequel should give you a pleasant return to that world. It has fashion, humor, workplace pressure, old relationships, new problems, and enough emotional moments to make the characters feel older, rather than simply bringing them back for nostalgia. The biggest merit is the acting, especially Meryl Streep, Anne Hathaway, Emily Blunt, and Stanley Tucci. The story about the changing media world is also timely. The friendship, rivalry, and respect between Andy and Miranda remain the heart of the film. The main demerit is that some parts feel predictable, and the story sometimes tries to handle too many business problems at once. It also depends heavily on the emotional connection audiences already have with the first film. Overall, The Devil Wears Prada 2 works best when it stops being just a fashion film and becomes a story about growing older, changing careers, accepting new realities, and deciding what is worth fighting for. It does not simply ask whether Andy can survive Miranda again. This time, it asks whether Miranda, Andy, and the whole world of Runway can survive the future. And that is what makes this second story worth watching.